Part 14. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, Past and Present. Chapter 131. Chapter 131 Crash. Lee Min helped Su Weiner up and walked out. Su Weiner paused slightly as she thought of something. She turned to look at Li Rui and said, "Brother Rui, please take care of Sister Yunur." Suleun lowered his eyes and looked at the tea leaves floating in the teacup without saying a word. Li Rui naturally would not refuse Suwan, "Be careful." "What should I be careful about when going to the toilet?" Suleun's lips curled up. Suwaner was deliberately leaving space for them. She wouldn't believe it if there wasn't something fishy about it. Not long after the two of them went out, a waiter came in to refill the water. The room was getting hotter for some reason. "Dry out the mouth." Suleun watched Li Rui drink the tea coldly, stood up, and walked to the door. I stretched out my hand and pulled, and the door was indeed closed. She heard the sound correctly just now. "What you do?" Li Rui's mind was already starting to feel a little strange. He looked at Suleun with squinted eyes and his voice was a little hoarse. As if he sensed something was wrong with him, Li Rui put his hands on the table and stood up. You drugged me." "Li Rui, if you have no brain, I wouldn't mind finding a doctor for you." Suleun walked to the window and looked down, seeing a pool of water. It seems that Su Weiner has already checked out the surrounding environment. There was movement behind him. Suleun grabbed Li Rui and threw him to the couch on one side. He pulled off the hanging silk and tied Li Rui's hands and feet directly. After doing this, Li Rui had obviously lost all reason, his expression was confused, and his cheeks were flushed. "Miss." Sun Wen opened the door from the outside, holding a woman in his arms. It was Su Weiner. Suleun raised his eyebrows and smiled, "Put her on the couch." After setting up everything in the private room, Suleun and Sun Wen left the private room. After wandering around on the first floor for a while, I saw several people coming in at the door, led by Li Menjao. Li Min also came back from the backyard, but there was a bit of anxiety on her face. "Min. Sister Menjao, Sister Wanner is missing." Li Min saw Li Menjao and arrived in a hurry. Li Menjao comforted the person, "Wanner is such an adult, nothing will happen to her." As she spoke, she glanced around and met Suleun's smiling eyes. "Suleun, why are you here?" "Sister Menjao, it was Sister Wanner who brought her here," Li Min said, then paused. "Aren't you upstairs? Why are you down?" "Sister Wanner said she had something to tell your brother, so I came down." Suleun shrugged and explained. "Has Sister Wanner gone back?" Li Min frowned, "but I didn't see her come out." "Perhaps you didn't pay attention," Li Menjao said, snorted coldly at Suleun, and led the people upstairs. Looking at the figures walking up the stairs, Suleun's mouth curved wider and he followed a few of them. Seeing a few people walking to the door of the private room, Li Menjao reached out and pushed the door open. Suleun raised his hands to cover his ears. Sure enough, there was a scream. In the private room, Su Weiner happened to be sober and rushed over, and immediately met Li Rui's obsessed eyes. She looked down and saw that her clothes had been torn apart quite a bit by Li Rui. "Sister Wanner." Li Min's surprised voice sounded at the door. Su Wanner suddenly looked out the door, and everyone's surprised and disbelieving eyes fell into her eyes. "How come?" she whispered. Li Menjao reacted quickly and wanted to close the door, but someone exclaimed, "Come and see, everyone, we caught a traitor." Before he could find the person calling, people on the second floor gathered around him. Suleun leaned on the railing and yawned. The noise in the distance seemed to have nothing to do with her. "Isn't this the eldest lady of the Suhao family? Is that her fiancé? Oh, this can't be like this for an unmarried couple, they're not married yet." The crowd surrounded the door of the private room, "And you kept saying what you said. Haven't you heard, the two of them have been seen walking hand in hand before. It's like this in public, no wonder you do such a thing. Stop talking. Lee Minmin waved her hand, pushed the person away, and then finally closed the private room door. Although we couldn't see what was going on inside, everyone's discussion hadn't stopped yet. In a private room. Elder brother. Lee Minmin noticed Li Rui's strange reaction and quickly poured water for Li Rui to drink. Su Weiner saw the scene and paused in adjusting her clothes. Minmin, wait a moment. What's wrong, Sister Weiner? There may be something wrong with the water. Ah. Li Minmin quickly put down the teacup. What should I do? The hospital is downstairs, let's take your brother down. But there are people outside. It's fine. Su Weiner knew that today's matter would definitely not be suppressed, and she could only make a fuss about Li Rui. She opened the door, her eyes already red. Can you help me? Mr. Li has been drugged. I, a weak woman, can't stop him. Su Weiner wiped away tears as she spoke. I saw the pitiful look on her face, which made everyone soften their hearts. So you were drugged. Come and help me. As soon as the onlookers heard this, they quickly came in to help. Soon, Li Rui was taken out and sent to the medical center downstairs. Beside the stairs, Su Weiner saw Suleun with a happy expression. Hatred flashed in her eyes. She has clearly arranged everything, so why does Suleun act like nothing is wrong? And Su Weiner touched the back of her neck. She was obviously knocked unconscious. Before Su Weiner could speak, Suleun spoke quickly and said apologetically, Sister, if I had known something would happen, I shouldn't have listened to you. It was my mistake to let you and Mr. Li be alone. As she said that, she stepped forward and took Su Weiner's hand. Sister, are you injured? Su Weiner's eyes widened. She originally wanted to frame Suleun, but she didn't expect that the other party would react faster than her. Sister, you should go to the hospital quickly and let the doctor take a look. Looking at the sisters' deep love, someone beside them said, Yes, Miss Su, you should go and let the doctor take a look. Okay, okay. Su Weiner bit her lower lip and went downstairs. Suleun followed her, showing concern. At the hospital, Li Rui was already lying on the bed and passed out. Doctor, please take a look at my sister. She was with the young master at the time. I wonder if she was injured anywhere. Suleun took a step forward and said, I am okay. Su Weiner said this through gritted teeth, but the doctor still took her pulse and said it was nothing serious. Are you really okay? Suleun frowned. My sister said she felt uncomfortable in her stomach before. It seemed like she had a bad stomach. This young lady is indeed fine, and her stomach is not broken. The doctor gave Su Weiner a strange look. His pulse was clearly normal, so why did he say he had a bad stomach? End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 132. Chapter 132. Choose one of three. Su Weiner's face turned a little pale when this matter was pointed out. She had just left Jade Tower and forgot about it. Although Li Minmin stayed by Li Rui's side, she did not ignore the situation here. Hearing what the doctor said, Li Minmin blinked and looked at Su Weiner. Sister Weiner, you haven't had a bad stomach. Then why go to the toilet? Su Weiner's eyes flickered. She couldn't lie in front of the doctor. Maybe I felt wrong. Yeah. Li Minmin stared at Su Weiner for a long time, then slowly looked away. Doctor, how is my brother? He was given phantom powder, and it was a large dose. It had to be leaked out. Doctor, just do it. Li Minmin hurriedly rushed over, but she was young and didn't understand the doctor's meaning at all. The doctor blushed slightly and said, Miss, I can't move my hands. What's the meaning? It means we need to find a woman for Mr. Li. Gu Yuanbei came in from outside the door. carrying a pack of oil paper in his hand. The smell seemed to be cakes. I think I heard something going on here when I was passing by, so I came in to take a look. Find a woman. Lee Min suddenly understood and her face turned red. She stood helpless, not knowing what to do. That's not possible, Warner is still here. Lee Minjao was the first to speak. Su Wainer looked troubled and asked, Doctor, is there no other way? There is a way, it's just that the young man should soak in cold water for a while to remove all the effects of the medicine from his body. Cold water, that's not possible. Lee Min shook her head in panic. This winter, let alone soaking in cold water, is unbearable even if you touch it. If Li Rui was really put in cold water for several hours, he would probably be dead. Gu Yuanbei stood beside Suleun, took out a piece of pastry from somewhere and handed it to Suleun. Sister Yunur, please try it. Thank you, Brother Gu. Suleun did not refuse, took it and took a sip, his eyes lit up. She has never eaten this pastry at Jade House. Does it taste good? This is the most delicious pastry on Chang'an Street. Suleun nodded, Brother Gu, this tastes great. Can you tell me where you bought it from? I want to take some back to my mother. Of course, I'll take you to buy it later. Gu Yuanbei returned patting his chest. The two people were talking as if no one else was around. I almost forgot. Gu Yuanbei patted his head, have you agreed on the idea? If you want to find a woman, I can do it for you. After all, I can't let you girls go. Li Menjao still looked disapproving, how can you find that kind of woman? How can Warner face Li Rui in the future? Then take a dip in cold water. Gu Yuanbei asked. As a result, Li Min said again, no, soak in cold water, something will happen to my brother. Doctor, if this is ignored, what will happen to this young master? Suleun held back his laughter and asked. One said he couldn't find a woman, and the other said he couldn't soak in cold water. Are they trying to kill Li Rui? The doctor sighed, if the effect of this medicine is not clear, this young man may have difficulty having in the future. Suleun covered his mouth and barely suppressed his laughter. She looked at Su Waner and the other three, raised her eyebrows and said, Sister Waner, Mr. Li is your fiancé after all, why don't you make the choice? This. How could Su Waner be chosen? No matter what she chooses, it's not the right choice. Li Rui's face turned redder and redder. The doctor checked his pulse and said anxiously, Mrs., please choose a way quickly. I don't think this young man can last long. Sister Waner, please save your brother. Li Min rushed to Su Waner and knelt down, with tears in her eyes. Their biological mother passed away early, and although their stepmother was not bad to them, she valued her biological children more. Li Min had been particularly attached to her brother Li Rui since she was a child, so how could she watch something happen to her brother? Min, get up quickly. Su Waner was startled and quickly reached out to pull Li Min. She failed to frame Suleun and dragged herself into such a trap. Su Waner wished she had never come out today. Sister Waner, you are my brother's fiancée. You love each other so much, even if you are not married yet, it doesn't matter, right? Min, do you know what you are talking about? Su Waner's eyes widened. She originally thought that Li Min meant for her to agree to find a woman, but she didn't expect that he wanted her to consummate the marriage with Li Rui. Suleun couldn't hold back for a moment, took a sip of water and coughed a few times. Should she say that Su Waner is miserable, or should she say that Li Min's brain is different from ordinary people's? In short, the farce in front of him far exceeded Suleun's expectation and became more and more interesting. How could Su Waner consummate her marriage with Li Rui? Even though she and Li Rui are an unmarried couple now, she can still flirt with Prince Yu. But once you give it to your body, nothing can be done to get it back. It is impossible for King Yu to marry a woman who is not perfect. Min, how can this be done? Suwaner pinched herself hard and forced a few tears from the corners of her eyes. Your brother and I are not married yet, how can we do such a thing? Min Min, are you taking advantage of me? I'm just kidding about my innocence. That's right, Min Min, how could you let Waner do such a thing? Li Menjao also helped Suwaner speak. Li Min Min cried and her eyes turned red. What about my brother? Are you going to kill him? Min Min, don't say that. Suwaner wanted to pull Li Min Min away, but she was thrown away. Min Min, there must be another way. Stop talking. Li Min Min wiped her tears and said fiercely, if you don't want to, I will find someone who is willing. In short, I can't let my brother lie down like this. She looked at Gu Yuanbei and moved her lips. Master, can you help me? Of course I will satisfy the beautiful lady's wishes. Gu Yuanbei clapped his hands, and several guards came up from behind and lifted Li Rui up. He ordered, find a better man for this young master. Yes. Li Minmin hesitated for a moment, thanked Gu Yuanbei, and then followed the footsteps of several guards and left the hospital. Li Menjao and Su Wainer were left alone, standing with ugly expressions. The people gathered around the door of the hospital had more to talk about. The fiancé wants to find a woman in front of his fiancée. Isn't this a clear loss of face to his fiancée? Even if it wasn't Li Rui's idea, in the eyes of others, it made no difference. What's more, the intimate posture between Su Wainer and Li Rui in the private room at that time was clearly visible to everyone. When word spreads, of course Su Wainer will be even more embarrassed. Su Wainer's face turned gloomy, and the instructions from people around her made her a little afraid to raise her head. Menjao, I feel a little uncomfortable, I want to go back. She leaned against Li Menjao and whispered. I have to say that Li Menjao had a deep affection for Sister Su Wainer, so she quickly supported her and said, I'll take you back. Looking at the two people leaving, Suleun curled up the corner of his mouth. The eyes are full of smiles. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 133. Chapter 133 Marriage is the best way. Gu Yuanbei waved the oil paper in front of Suleun and said, Sister Yunur, it's no longer fun, let's go. Good. Suleun nodded lightly. Gu Yuanbei led Suleun to the place where he bought pastries and muttered, I didn't expect to see such a scene when I went out. He looked at Suleun, Sister Yunur, what do you think Mr. Li would choose? Brother Gu, I won't answer such a meaningless question. Suleun's smile faded a bit. How would Li Rui choose? Of course he would choose to protect Su Wainer's body. After all, he made the same choice in his previous life. After buying the pastries, Gu Yuanbei thoughtfully sent Suleun back to Su Mansion. Huiro Pavilion. Suleun entered the house carrying the cakes and was pulled by Sun Gro. Yunur, what happened today? Of course, what happened in the Jade Building would not be reported so quickly, but the way Su Wainer was sent back by Li Menjao while crying was seen by many people in the Su Mansion. Sun Gro remembered that Suleun was with Su Wainer when she went out today. Suleun put down the cake in his hand and said, Su Wainer invited me to the Jade Building to set a trap for me. Tell everything about the Jade Tower. Su Wainer is so brave. Sun Gro only thought it was ridiculous that Su Wainer actually wanted to ruin Yunus' innocence just to reject the marriage. She sat on the chair, breathing heavier and heavier. Su Wainer did all this to climb up to the throne of Prince Yu. Suleun spoke calmly, but Sun Gro's heart skipped a beat. She wants to marry King Yu. Su Wainer could be crazy. If her identity is found out by someone from the royal family, the Su family will not be able to escape the guilt of being a deceitful person. That will implicate the 9 tribes. Yunur, this must be stopped. Even if it were not for the Su family, but for the Sun family and her children, Sun Gro would not let Su Wainer really get together with Prince Yu. She stood up and said, "Let's go find the old lady now. Hurry to the old lady's yard." Before the two of them entered, they heard Su Wainer crying. Sun Gro and Suleun looked at each other and entered the room. "Grandma, how will Wainer get along with herself in the future?" Su Wainer knelt beside the old lady's legs with red eyes. Her look made people feel pity for her. The old lady's eyes were full of love. "Wainer, Grandma will make the decision for you in this matter. Mother-in-law, I think it's best for them to get married as soon as possible." Sun Gro interrupted the warm scene between grandfather and grandson by saying something. "Mother." Su Wainer trembled and looked at Sun Gro aggrievedly. "Mother, do you want Wainer to be a joke? Isn't what you did in Jade Tower enough to make other people laugh at it?" Sun Gro asked coldly. Su Wainer didn't know how to speak for a moment. "Okay, Wainer has suffered so much grievance, it's okay if you don't comfort her. How can you push her into the pit of fire like this?" The old lady glanced at Sun Gro with disapproval, and when she saw Suleun beside her, her face darkened slightly. She pursed her lips and asked, "Why weren't you there at that time?" "My granddaughter felt a little bored, so she went out for a walk." Suleun blinked, and his tone of explanation was a little guilty. "If I had known something would happen, my granddaughter would not have left, and she would have been able to help Sister Wainer." "Yeah." The old lady looked at Suleun suspiciously. This incident happened so suddenly that she couldn't help but become suspicious. But soon, she felt that her suspicion was not right. If Suleun wanted to the marriage back, why did he let Wainer and Li Rui stay in the private room? What's more, it's outside. Mother-in-law, Wainer and Li Rui are an unmarried couple, how can they be called a fire pit? Sun Gro protected Suleun behind her. Instead of giving others more opportunities to discuss this matter, it would be better to simply get married and block those people's attention. Mouth. "Grandma." Su Wainer looked at the old lady expectantly. She couldn't marry Li Rui. The old lady didn't think so in her heart. She cannot let Su Wainer marry Li Rui. "I will discuss this matter with the Marquis when he comes back." When the old lady said this, it was clear that she wanted to buy time. Sun Gro looked at the old lady. If it had been before, the old lady would have agreed long ago. Why now? What does the mother have to discuss with her son? Su Changqing came in from outside the house and was stunned for a moment when he saw the situation inside the house. Soon, he came back to his senses and walked to the old lady. "What's going on here?" "Master Ho, we are discussing Wainer's marriage." Sun Gro responded quickly and spoke. "Wainer and Li Rui have been engaged for many years, and it's really time to get married." Su Changqing didn't resist at all, and felt that it would be good for the Su family to let Su Wainer get married as soon as possible. Hearing Su Changqing's words, the faces of the old lady and Su Wainer became a little ugly. The old lady glanced at Sun Gro, coughed lightly and said, "Master Marquis, we need to discuss this matter carefully. Mother-in-law, we can't delay this matter. Today's incident in Jade Building will spread very soon. Our Su family will definitely be affected by that time." Sun Gro spoke out worriedly, her face full of concern for the Su family. Su Changqing frowned. What happened to Jade Tower? He has always valued reputation. How could he not ask questions when he heard this? "I will explain this matter to you later, Mr. Marquis." The old lady hurriedly spoke, then looked at Sun Gro and Suleun. "You two go back first. Grandma, since Yuner is here, let Yuner tell her father about this matter." Without waiting for the old lady to stop him, Suleun opened and closed his mouth and quickly told what happened in the Jade Building. After finishing speaking, he added, "Father, you also know the reputation of Jade Tower. There were many people present at that time." Su Changqing's mouth twitched and he glared at Su Wainer angrily. "Why didn't you tell me about such a big thing earlier?" "Master Ho, Please calm down, you're scaring Wan'er. The old lady quickly pulled Suwaner over and reminded her unhappily. Mother, are you still defending her now? If she dares to do such a thing, is she still afraid of being scolded by me? Father, someone drugged Li Rui, so I pose medicine, others don't care whether it's medicine or something else. It's about the reputation of the Su mansion. Su Changqing is naturally very intelligent. I'll go to the Li mansion tomorrow to discuss the marriage. After saying that, he flicked his sleeves and left. Sun Jiaro and Suleun looked at each other, saluted the old lady, and then left. The old lady and Suwaner were left alone. Grandma, what should I do with Wan'er? The old lady also looked helpless. She knew very well that getting married was the best way to stop everyone from talking. But how could she push Suwaner into the fire pit? Grandma will figure it out. The old lady sighed and touched Suwaner's hand to comfort her. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 134. Chapter 134 Mrs. Li comes to visit. As soon as he returned to Kaahwaziazu, Lian Xian came to greet him. Miss, it's done. She also held a few strands of bright golden silk thread in her hand and raised them in front of Suleun. I can't suppress the smile on my face. Suleun reached out and took one, pinched it with his hand. It feels almost the same. Lian Xian had already prepared the tools. After threading the needle and thread, Suleun simply sewed a pattern on the embroidered handkerchief. The color is a bit worse, but the toughness is enough. Suleun nodded with satisfaction. Her busy work in Lin Mansion these days was not in vain. In order to improve the silk thread to replace the gold and silver thread, she and Lu Qin studied for several days and tried several methods, and finally succeeded. Miss Lu said the same thing. Lian Xian looked at Suleun with admiration. Her young lady was really different. She had just learned embroidery for a short time and was as good as Miss Lu Qin. Even silk threads can be improved. Tomorrow I will go to the Lin Mansion to study with her again. Suleun was not surprised at all. If Lu Qin didn't even have this ability, how could he be praised by the Queen Mother? When Lian Xian heard this, she thought of something and said, Miss Lu said that she will not be in Lin Mansion tomorrow. That's okay. Suleun responded, and she would just go and see for herself tomorrow. Su Mansion, Zanjiao Courtyard. It is the courtyard where Wenyao lives, and its name has now been changed. The plaque was inscribed by Su Changqing himself, but no one told anyone about it. Su Changzhong sneaked into the yard, and before he had taken a few steps, he was stopped by Su Yuking. Are you going to gamble again? Yu Qing, if you give me some more money, I can win it back right away. Looking at Su Changzhong's greedy expression, Su Yuking frowned uneasily. Although he was good at gambling before, he was not as obsessed as he is now. Not to mention, brother, I've already given you all the money I had before. Then go and sell some more vases, isn't there a lot in my mother's house? Brother, Su Yuking pulled Su Changzhong to the corner, I have sold all the bottles in my mother's house. The others are either too big or there is no way to make a fake. What do you want me to sell? Su Changzhong ignored it. Didn't Dad give Mom a lot of jewelry before? You can sell those. You are really crazy. Su Yuking's eyes widened and she covered Su Changzhong's mouth. Those jewelry, those servants will check them every day, how do you want me to get them? It's all ours from now on, so what does it matter? Su Changzhong muttered. Su Yuking's hands relaxed and she blinked. That's right, it's all ours from now on, why can't we take it? She was also a little excited. Miss. The voice of the maid came from behind, and Su Yuking quickly let go of her hand. I'll think about this again, and you can live in peace these days. Once he heard this, Su Changzhong knew that he had a chance. Hurriedly nodded, I will definitely not gamble these days. Early the next morning, before Sulayun could leave the mansion, he saw several carriages parked at the door of the mansion. Mrs. Lee and Lee Min Min got out of the car. She took a few steps back and disappeared. A servant had already come in to report, and Mrs. Lee also walked to the main hall with the support of Lee Min Min. And there are several carriages at the gate of the mansion, and there are servants carrying things down, as if they are here to deliver betrothal gifts. Sulayun's eyes flashed, and he became a little curious. Miss Sun Wen appeared behind Sulayun. Sulayun swallowed and turned around slowly. Actually, I can remind you next time you show up. I'm sorry, miss, I scared you. Sun Wen looked calm and apologized seriously, but he didn't seem to be sincere at all. I have something to report. Knowing that Sun Wen's temper was like this, Sulayun couldn't say much. Let's talk about it when we get back. Mrs. Lee's visit made Sulayun temporarily give up the idea of going to Lin Mansion. She took Sun Wen back to Kaehwaziazu. I don't know who is helping behind the scenes. What happened yesterday has already spread widely. Sun Wen informed Sulayun of the situation. Yesterday, Suwainer wanted to take the opportunity to bring Sulayun and Li Rui together, but Sulayun saw the clues, so Suwainer suffered the consequences. Originally, Sulayun asked Sun Wen to spread the news, so as to force the old lady to marry Suwainer as soon as possible. Unexpectedly, some kind-hearted person was helping behind the scenes, and it only took one night. The news spread throughout the capital, far beyond Sulayun's imagination. As long as they are not enemies, we don't have to worry about anything else. Sulayun is not uncurious, but perhaps she can't afford to offend someone with such energy. Now, what she is most concerned about is naturally Suwainer. Let's go to the main hall and have a look. There's a lot of fun there too. Take Liangzin and Kuliu to the main hall. At this time, the atmosphere in the main hall seemed stagnant. The old lady is sitting on the main seat, and the old lady Li is sitting next to her. Old sister, Wan'er and I were supposed to go to the Li mansion to apologize. Why bother to come here first? The old lady wanted to say a few words to Mrs. Li, but when she raised her eyes, she only saw Mrs. Li's cold face. There is no need to apologize. Mrs. Li took a sip of tea and put down the teacup heavily. Since the matter has already happened, it is better to resolve it as soon as possible. It's natural. The old lady was about to continue talking when she caught a glimpse of the boxes of things being brought in from the corner of her eye, and her expression darkened slightly. Suwaner looked at the boxes, her breathing stagnant. She raised her head and tried to read the clues from Li Minmin's face, but she only met Li Minmin's cold expression. Li Minmin could clearly see Suwainer's disregard for Li Rui yesterday. How passionate she was towards Suwainer in the past, but now she feels even more disgusting. Old sister, what are you going to do? The marriage between Rui and your granddaughter was decided early in the morning. It's better to choose the right date than to hit it. I've asked people to calculate the recent auspicious dates so that they can get married as soon as possible. Sulayun heard these words as soon as he arrived in the main hall. His eyes flashed and he obediently sat down in the corner. It did not disturb the people in the main hall. Old sister, I'm afraid this matter will have to happen again. What are we still discussing? Everything about Rui and her has spread in the capital. When I came here in the morning, the discussions didn't stop. Mrs. Li slammed the table hard and became very angry. We, Rui, have always kept ourselves clean, and we have never done anything like that. Mrs. Su's face looked ugly, and she also understood what Mrs. Li meant. The Li family is a scholarly family, and the men in the house are also required not to sleep with other women before they are married. Even the maid in the connecting room will only be used the night before the wedding. But now that Li Rui's incident has spread, the Li family has also lost face. Sister, why am I not as angry as you? Mrs. Su sighed and said worriedly, Wanner is also a victim. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 135. Chapter 135 Proposal. Mrs. Su, what you said is wrong. Li Minmin snorted coldly, dissatisfied. Mrs. Li glanced at her and said, Minmin, don't be unreasonable. The words were reproachful, but the tone was not. Obviously, Li Minmin's words were also Mrs. Li's thoughts. Mrs. Su's eyes flashed. If she couldn't think of a way, today, I'm afraid she would have to follow Mrs. Li's wishes. Mrs. Li, if you are weird, just blame Wanner, it's all Wanner's fault. Su Weiner suddenly spoke up and knelt down in front of Mrs. Li. The sound of his knees hitting the ground was particularly clear. It makes people tremble. Seeing Su Wanner's movements, Mrs. Li was startled. What are you doing? Why don't you get up quickly? Mrs. Li, what happened to Brother Rui is all my fault. If I had been more careful, I would not have caused Brother Rui to drink or be drugged. Su Weiner's tone was sincere. She bent down deeply and kowtowed. What's the use of saying this now? Things have already happened. It's the same as getting married sooner or later. Why do you resist so much? Mrs. Li was particularly puzzled. Everyone said that Su Weiner and Li Rui were a talented and beautiful couple. Why was it that when she proposed to get married as soon as possible, neither of them was willing? Looking at Su Weiner in front of her, Mrs. Li thought for a while. Su Weiner took a deep breath. Mrs. Li, it's not that Wanner doesn't want to get married, but given the current situation, if Wanner gets married, wouldn't it be even more of a joke? How do you say this? Old Madame Li frowned and looked at Su Weiner. She wanted to see how Su Weiner would explain. Mrs. Li, things just happened. You want Brother Rui and me to get married. People on the sidelines are even more muttering after hearing this. Now that spring is approaching, making Brother Rui busy with marriage will even affect his studies. Su Weiner's tone gradually faded. He calmly said, Wanner has another way. What? Mrs. Li knew very well that what Su Weiner said was not a reason. Just looking at Su Weiner's expression, she was curious about what solution the other party could come up with. Wanner is willing to go to Lanjiao Temple to pray for Brother Rui. As soon as these words came out, the voices in the main hall became much softer. Suleun sat in her seat with a smile on her lips. Su Weiner was more willing than she thought. But I have to admit that Su Weiner had a good idea. Lanjiao Nunnery was founded since the beginning of the Dacian dynasty. It was originally founded by the founding queen to protect women, and later it gradually became a nunnery. Until now, it has become a good place for a woman to reflect and pray for her husband and family. Su Weiner chose this method, and everyone would praise her. In this way, the focus has been shifted. It's just that once you enter Lanjiao Temple, you must not come out before time. And even if the Queen Mother goes there, you cannot let the maids serve you. You have to do everything by yourself. Suleun has been here for half a year and knows everything about what is going on in Lanjiao Temple. Wanner. Mrs. Su was startled by Su Weiner's suggestion, but when she came back to her senses, she couldn't help but think about it. This was indeed a good idea. It's just going to hurt Wanner. She looked at Mrs. Li and asked, Sister, I think this method is good, what do you think? Mrs. Li frowned slightly and had her own considerations. Spring was approaching and she didn't want anything to disturb Li Rui. What's more, it was also a good thing for Su Weiner to pray. In the end, there is no other way, just like Wanner said. As for the betrothal gifts that were brought in, they naturally went back and forth wherever they went. Before leaving, Li Minmin stared at Su Weiner for a while, moved her lips, and asked, Do you really want to pray for your brother? Minmin, I know you blame me, and I will prove it to you. Li Minmin frowned, and after a long time, She followed Mrs. Lee and left without saying a word. After everyone in the main hall had finished leaving, Sulayun stood up and stretched. "Miss, are we still going to Lin Mansion?" Lian Xian took a step forward and asked. Sulayun looked at the sun and saw that it was still early. "Of course I want to go. Let's go. In this marriage between the Su family and the Li family, both parties will never propose to cancel the engagement. In this case, Sulayun is of course eager to see Su Waner and Li Rui become a couple, so as not to disgust himself. What's more, this can also completely break off the relationship between Su Waner and King Yu. Why not do it?" Although things did not develop as Sulayun thought, there was some progress. Su Waner prayed for Li Rui, and in the eyes of outsiders, the relationship between the two became closer, but they just missed a wedding. Sulayun suppressed her smile. She was curious about how Su Waner could get involved with King Yu. Peony Garden. Yu Yao took several maids to pack things. "Miss, I heard that plain clothes will be given out in Lanjiao Temple, do you still want to bring clothes there?" Yu Yao carefully looked at Su Waner in front of the dressing table and asked in a low voice. Su Waner stared at herself in the bronze mirror for a long time, and suddenly clenched her hands. "You said, I'll take it over, when will I wear it? You still ask me such a question." She was very aware of the consequences of proposing this idea, and she could not leave Ajio Temple until spring. Even had to take care of himself in Ajio Temple. Yu Yao shook her body and quickly bent down. "Miss, please calm down, I know this." Su Waner took a deep breath and saw Granny Ian's figure reflected in the bronze mirror. "Grandma Lan." "Miss, don't worry, I will go to Lanjiao Temple with you." Grandma Lan stepped forward to tidy up Su Waner's somewhat messy hair. "Grandma Lan, can you go into Lanjiao Temple?" Su Waner was a little surprised. She had never heard of any connection between Granny Lan and Lanjiao Temple. The old slave has his own way. Grandma Lan always meant what she said. Su Waner was somewhat relieved when she heard this. If she were really allowed to go to Lanjiao Temple alone, she would probably collapse within a few days. A few days later, Su Waner set out for Lanjiao Temple. Mrs. Su was very reluctant to part with her and followed her all the way to Lanjiao Temple. "Send the person to the door and then leave." The news that Su Waner prayed for Li Rui also spread, which indeed aroused a lot of discussion. They are all compliments to Su Waner. Lin Mansion. Sulayun took out the improved silk thread soaked in color from the barrel and dried them one by one on the pole. "I haven't been back for a few days, so you can do your own work." At the entrance of the courtyard, Lu Qin stood dusty. Sulayun saw her and kept moving his hands. "You can go away for a few days. Can I not do my own business?" Lu Qin, who was supposed to be away for a day, unexpectedly did not come back for 3 days. Sulayun was curious, but did not ask immediately. Lu Qin stepped forward to fold his sleeves and help Sulayun dry the silk threads. After the yard was filled with silk threads, the two of them took a breath and sat on the corridor to rest. Liang Xin and Kuliu brought tea to the two of them. End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 136. Chapter 136 Parents' Orders and Matchmaker's Words. Lu Qin held the teacup but did not take a sip. Sulayun did not disturb Lu Qin's meditation, while drinking tea and taking notes. From time to time, I also made a sketch of the picture of hundreds of birds paying homage to the phoenix. The materials are all ready and we can start sewing officially tomorrow. Aren't you curious about what I've been doing these days? Lu Qin looked at Sulayun painted on the paper and suddenly spoke. I'm indeed curious, but I'm not very familiar with you, Miss Lu. If I ask you rashly, I'm afraid I'll make you unhappy. Sulayun smiled at Luchin. Perhaps this matter has been accumulating in Luchin's heart, the moment he saw Sulayun's smile. Luchin had some desire to talk. She took a deep breath and said, "When the Queen Mother's birthday party is over, I will get married. Perhaps, I can't say congratulations." Sulayun looked at Luchin's face. When she said this, she couldn't see that Luchin was happy at all. Luchin smiled helplessly, "My parents have ordered a matchmaker. Even if I don't want to, what can I do? I am already 20 years old. If I don't get married, I'm afraid I won't be able to get married." For a woman, not being able to get married is a very scary thing. But for Sulayun, who had experienced a painful marriage, there seemed to be nothing wrong with not marrying. It's better to be alone than to be with someone who doesn't love you. Sulayun knew that she had this idea only because of the suffering she had suffered. For Luchin, it was natural that she could not violate her parents' orders. "I wonder who the person you want to marry is." In her impression, Luchin seemed to have disappeared after getting married. As for who she married, she had no memory at all. "You probably don't know that he is the son of the Su family." Luchin took a sip of tea and returned slowly. "The Su family?" Sulayun thought about the families in the capital, and there were quite a few with the surname Su. However, although the Su family who could be engaged to Luchin was not too bad, it was not like those official families. Although Luchin was particularly famous for his embroidery, his background was not a good one. His father was a scholar, and he married the daughter of a merchant, and then he settled in the capital. Is it the Su family in the west of the city? After thinking for a long time, Sulayun could only think of this family, with a scholarly background, worthy of Luchin. But Luchin shook his head. "No, the Su family I'm talking about has something to do with the people in the palace." "Isn't Miss Lu talking about Suzian?" Lian Xian exclaimed in surprise. Sulayun looked at her. "Do you know, Miss, this Suzian?" Lian Xian glanced at Luchin and seemed to feel that it was not good to say this in front of her, so she closed her mouth again. Luchin forced a smile and said, "Tell your lady about it." Seeing this, Lian Xian dared to speak. "Miss, I have occasionally heard comments from the servants in the palace that Suzian's godfather is a high in the palace. Although Suzian's father has a small official position, he has this with the support of my godfather. Suzian's reputation in the capital is not very good." Sulayun thought about it for a while, but had no impression. She has never heard of Suzian, or she may have heard of him but didn't care, so she forgot about it. Hearing Lian Xian's introduction, Sulayun frowned. "Bad reputation? He seems to be a person with bad character. Why did your parents let you marry such a person?" Luchin's face showed a bit of despair. "It was Suzian who sent people to my house to propose marriage. My father and mother are just ordinary people, how dare they resist?" "You. Liyun, Luchin, you are here." Mrs. Lin's voice came from the door of the courtyard. She walked in quickly and pulled the two of them up one by one. "I was looking for you. Things have been delivered." Sulayun was interrupted by Mrs. Lin's words. She and Luchin looked at each other and followed Mrs. Lin outside. "There is a big shelf in front of the embroidery room. All are made of the finest wood. This was later used to hang the picture of hundreds of birds paying homage to the phoenix. Look, what's the problem?" Mrs. Lin said to the two of them. Sulayun and Luchin stepped forward to check. "You can still smell the aroma of wood when you get closer, which is obviously a thoughtful work." Mrs. Lin, "There is nothing wrong with this shelf," Sulayun said to Mrs. Lin after completing the inspection. Mrs. Lin patted her chest and said, "That's good. You should be careful and take the things in and put them away." "Yes." The servants stepped forward to lift the shelf and carefully brought it into the room on one side. "I see that your silk thread seems to be finished. You may start sewing tomorrow." Mrs. Lin walked up to the two of them and asked. Sulayun glanced at Luchin, who nodded and replied, Mrs. Lin, don't worry, Miss Su and I will start production tomorrow. Okay, I'll trouble you. Mrs. Lin sighed, it's really difficult for the two of you to make it in 2 months, but I can only leave it to you. Facing Mrs. Lin's worried gaze, Sulayun blinked and said with a smile, Mrs. Lin must have confidence in us. Of course I have it. Mrs. Lin smiled. If she didn't trust Sulayun and Luchin, she wouldn't have let them sew the picture of 100 birds facing the phoenix. Back to Su Mansion, the sun had already set halfway. As soon as Sulayun had dinner, the old lady sent someone to call her. Hurrying to the old lady's yard, Sulayun glanced around as soon as he entered the house. Although Suwainer was gone, there was still no shortage of people in the old lady's yard. Lu Shuiying was leaning against the old lady and talking, while Lu Suya was sitting quietly aside. Grandmother! Sulayun shouted, and the old lady seemed to notice her and raised her head to look. Girl Yun is here, sit down quickly. Thank you, Grandma. Sulayun sat firmly in his seat, and Lu Suya next to him smiled as a greeting. After the old lady asked Sulayun to sit down, she started chatting with Lu Shuiying. It seemed that she had nothing to say to Sulayun and just asked her to come and sit in the yard. Grandma, Sister Wanner is not here, will Shuiying stay with you in the yard these days? When Lu Shuiying mentioned Suwainer, she couldn't hide a hint of pride on her face. Suwainer was obviously not a child of the Su family, but she always dominated her grandmother and made her love her so much. Now that Suwainer has gone to Longjio Nunnery, she just takes this opportunity to let her grandmother know that she is the one that her grandmother should love. The old lady didn't notice Lu Shuiying's pride. Thinking of Suwainer who had gone to Longjio Temple, she felt a little pity in her heart. Grandma, aren't you willing? The old lady didn't answer. Lu Shuiying shouted, her tone a little aggrieved, and then the old lady came back to her senses. Since Shuiying wants to take care of her grandmother, of course her grandmother is willing. The old lady responded with a smile, and the smile on Lu Shuiying's face became more and more obvious. He also glanced at Sulayun and Lu Suya, as if they were showing off. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 137. Chapter 137 Counterfeit. Sulayun could tell Lu Shuiying's thoughts at a glance. Lu Shuiying didn't have any big ideas, but her brain was not very good. She was often bewitched by Suwainer with just a few words. But on the other hand, she looked down on Suwainer from the bottom of her heart, and did a lot of superfluous things. I forgot about it while we were chatting. The old lady raised her eyes and looked at Sulayun. Girl Yun, I asked you to come here because I have something for you to do. Your sister Wanner has gone to Longjio Temple to pray for blessings, so you can bring some gifts for her. Come and visit Li Rui. Visit Li Rui? Sulayun's eyes flashed with sarcasm, but his face showed embarrassment. Grandma, is this not good? What's wrong? You are Wanner's sister, so it's appropriate to go and see her for your sister. The old lady's face was pale, and she seemed to have made up her mind. Grandma, you also know the relationship between Sister Wanner and Mr. Li Rui. If I, the younger sister, go alone, I might be accused of stealing a man from my sister. Yuner doesn't care, but how can Sister Wanner and the Su family suffer such humiliation? Sulayun's words stunned everyone present. The old lady stared at Sulayun for a long time. She had never seen Sulayun speak so freely since she came back from Sulayun. What nonsense are you talking about? You are trying to steal a man. How can a lady like this say such a thing? Listening to the old lady's scolding voice, Sulayun blinked, pursed his lips and said, Grandma, it was Yuner who was in a hurry, but what Yuner said is not wrong, right? You asked Yuner to go to the Li mansion alone and spread the word. Is that what you mean? Grandma didn't explain it well just now. Grandma didn't let you go alone. Huayuan and Shueya will also be with you. The old lady's expression was a little stiff. That was the reason why she asked Suleun to visit Li Rui. Unexpectedly, Suleun saw the problem. In fact, it was the old lady who was anxious. The recent events had made her lose her usual calmness. Only then could he come up with such a last resort. Suleun nodded clearly, so that's the case. It actually shocked Yunur. As he spoke, he patted his chest, looking frightened. The old lady's idea was not achieved. Seeing that Suleun was not feeling well, she said, if Girl Yun is busy with other things, please go back first. Suleun was too lazy to stay here any longer, so he stood up and left. Grandma, Shueya also has something to do. You go too. The old lady waved her hand, but did not look at Lu Sueya at all. Lu Sueya left the courtyard and followed Suleun, Sister Yunur. What's the matter with cousin Shueya? Suleun looked at Lu Sueya's troubled expression and asked. I want to buy some things. I wonder if I can ask Sister Yunur to accompany me tomorrow. Tomorrow morning is fine. Suleun thought for a while. I have some things to do in the afternoon. It'll be ready in one morning. Lu Sueya bit her lip, then I'll go find you early tomorrow morning. After saying that, Lu Sueya turned and left. Looking at Lu Sueya's leaving back, Suleun frowned slightly. She didn't know if it was her misunderstanding. Why did she feel that something was wrong with Lu Sueya's face? Zanjiuiwen. Su Changqing got up from the bed, and a servant came forward to change his clothes with his head lowered. Sulang, are you leaving? Wen Yao lay on her side and looked at Su Changqing. I can't stay with you in the house. Su Changqing comforted him and was about to leave when he heard a crisp sound. One of the maids broke the vase and quickly knelt down. What's going on? You're so careless. Mammy ordered people to come forward and clean it. Her eyes glanced at the vase, and her face changed slightly. This vase. Why don't you pack it up quickly? Su Changqing frowned and said, if a piece falls and is stepped on by you Niang, you will be punished by yourself. Mammy looked embarrassed and said, Master Marquis, this vase is not right. What's wrong? Wen Yao put on her clothes and stood up. Looking at the debris on the ground, she couldn't see anything wrong. What's wrong? Su Changqing's face darkened slightly. The things in Zanjiuan were all brought by him from the warehouse. What's the problem? Mammy quickly picked up a fragment, pointed to the cracks on it and said, Master Marquis, this vase is fake. Impossible. There are no fakes in Su Mansion's warehouse. Su Changqing frowned even more tightly. Mammy did not dare to refute, but whispered, Master Marquis, you can find someone to take a look. Maybe this old slave really made a mistake. She did not directly agree with Su Changqing's words, but she still had doubts about the vase. Su Changqing specially arranged this nanny in this courtyard. He also knew that she had a steady temperament, so she was a little suspicious for a moment. Go and ask a master to take a look. Go through the back door so that no one can see it. Su Changqing gave the order and then sat down in his seat, not planning to leave for the time being. This movement could not be hidden from Sun Wu, who had been staring at Zanjiuiwen. After learning about the incident, Sun Wu was about to inform Sun Gro when he was pulled back by Sun Wen. Miss, I want you to bring a message to Madam. The matter will escalate in a moment and Madam will come to Zanjiuiwen. Sun Wen said. Looking at his brother's calm expression, Sun Wu had some idea in his mind. This matter must have something to do with the lady. The appraiser was quickly brought in. After an investigation, it was discovered that many small decorations in the moon room had been replaced with fakes. Who dares to do such a thing in Zanjiuiwen? Aunt Joan, go and find out everything. Yes, Lord Marquis. Mother Joan quickly led people to search. Wen Yao brought a cup of tea to Su Changqing. Sulang, don't be angry, it's just a small thing, It's fine. It's not worth it to make yourself angry. That's what he said, but there was a coldness in Wei Wenyao's eyes. How dare someone take her things away? Yu Niang, I'm not angry about these gadgets. Su Changqing looked at Wenyao and held her hand. I'm angry that someone in this yard actually did such a thing and didn't take you seriously. How can I bear it? Su Lang, you are so kind. Wenyao blushed and leaned into Su Changqing's arms. Su Yuqing heard the noise and came out of her house. She saw the scene as soon as she entered the house, but she couldn't care less about being shy and said quickly, Mom, what happened? There is a thief in this yard. Wenyao looked at the fakes pointed out by the master. Su Yuqing's face turned pale. Those were the things she took out and sold for money. Mom, is there some misunderstanding? Su Yuqing's hands and feet were a little cold, her thoughts were surging, but she couldn't think of a solution. If only mother knew, she could still explain it, but father was also there. What could she say? End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 138. Chapter 138 Dizzy. Su Yuqing didn't dare to show any expression, but she stood there with an unconcealable panic. It's just that Su Changqing and Wenyao didn't pay attention. Soon, Grandma Zhone came back with the people. Master Marquis, Madam, and the servants' houses have been searched and nothing was found. At this moment, there was a loud noise outside the house. Su Yuqing's heart skipped a beat when she heard the voice of her brother Su Changzhong. Brother Zhong. Su Changqing also recognized the voice and strode out of the house. Wenyao also heard this voice, and when she looked at Su Yuqing's pale face, her brows furrowed. She glared at Su Yuqing and lowered her voice and asked, Does this matter have anything to do with you? Mother. Okay, Wenyao interrupted Su Yuqing and walked out of the room quickly. At this time, Su Changzhong was being pulled by his servants. His whole body was covered with dirt, his face was bruised, and he was in a very embarrassed state. Brother Zhong, what's going on? Who beat you like this? Su Changqing thought Su Changzhong was being bullied and asked. However, Su Changzhong dared not say anything, but he hesitated and couldn't explain clearly. Su Lang, let's go inside and talk. Don't let the child freeze outside. Wenyao hurriedly stepped forward to hold Su Changqing, winked at Su Yuqing who was following behind, and pulled her into the house together with Su Changzhong. Although the room was warm, Su Changqing's face showed a chill. Tell me, who harmed you? Dad will definitely seek justice for you. Dad, no, I threw it myself. Su Changzhong trembled. His father had also left when he came back in the past. Why did he meet him today? He lowered his head and did not dare to look at the faces of the others, so he did not receive Su Yuqing's reminder. Su Changqing also felt that Su Changzhong didn't want to worry about him, so he didn't want to say anything. So he said earnestly, Brother Zhong, I feel guilty for not being able to give you the status of my legitimate son. If you are bullied and Dad can't help, how do you want Dad to deal with it? Dad, really not. Su Changzhong looked troubled. He was in terrible pain all over his body, but he still had to deal with Su Changqing, and he was really tired. Okay, then I'll check it out myself. Su Changqing saw that he was unwilling to tell, so he rolled his sleeves and planned to find out himself. How could Su Changzhong dare to ask Su Changqing to investigate? Wouldn't this investigation expose his gambling? Master Ho. Suddenly, Wenyao knelt down and pulled Su Changqing. Yu Niang, what are you doing? Su Changqing was stunned for a moment, then quickly realized and wanted to pull Wenyao. Unexpectedly, Wenyao shook off his hand. Master Marquis, Yu Niang is at fault. Wenyao lowered her head, her voice a bit sad. It was Yu Niang who failed to discipline her children well, so these things happened. Yu Niang, what are you talking about? Su Changqing looked at Wen Yao in confusion. Wen Yao took a deep breath and shouted to Su Changzhong and Su Yuking, "You two, why don't you kneel down?" Su Yuking knelt down without any hesitation. Su Changzhong, on the other hand, still looked puzzled. He was pulled hard by Su Yuking before he fell to his knees. "You Niang, get up first. If you kneel like this, something will happen to the baby in your belly. Master Ho, if I can get your forgiveness, you Niang will be willing to kneel down." "You Niang, of course I forgive you, please get up quickly." Su Changqing was worried about the child in Wen Yao's belly, but also really felt sorry for Wen Yao, so he used strong hands to pull the person up. This time, there was not much resistance, and Wen Yao was pulled up. He also fell into Su Changqing's arms. "Master Ho, I had people replace those things." "You Niang, why did you do this? If you don't like these, I'll have someone change them again." With the previous foreshadowing, Su Changqing was not angry, but became more and more confused. "Master Ho, that's not the case." Wen Yao sighed, "Brother Zhong owes a sum of money outside. I have no choice but to sell these things to pay back the money to Brother Zhong." "Oh, money." Su Changqing looked at Su Changzhong and frowned. Su Changzhong, who was kneeling on the ground, had already sensed some clues. He lowered his head and did not dare to speak or look at Su Changqing. "You also know that Brother Zhong has always been a warm-hearted person. A classmate asked him for help before, and as a result, Brother Zhong owed money to a gambling house." Su Changqing's face dropped as soon as he heard the word gambling house. Some things have always been his bottom line, such as gambling. Although he didn't spend much time with Su Changzhong, he did discipline this child bit by bit. Even Su Ye didn't receive his guidance a few times. He gave many instructions, but the most important thing was to tell Su Changzhong not to gamble. But now he was told that Su Changzhong not only gambled, but also owed a large sum of money. "When did you know?" Su Changqing still had some sense and asked coldly. Wen Yao pulled his sleeve and said, "Su Lang, don't blame Brother Zhong. If you want to blame, blame me. It's because I didn't do my duty as a mother and I didn't notice it earlier." "When exactly is it?" Su Changqing lost his patience, threw Wen Yao away, pointed at Su Changzhong and cursed, "How many times have I told you, you can touch anything, just don't gamble. It's better for you to play with women than to gamble. You evil son, tell me how much you owe." After saying that, Su Changqing was so angry that he stepped forward and kicked him. "Kick Su Changzhong to the ground directly." Su Changzhong was already in pain all over. After being kicked by Su Changqing, he lay on the ground and couldn't get up for a long time. "Master Ho, calm down, look at Brother Zhong, he is already injured." Wen Yao quickly grabbed Su Changqing, who was about to make a move, and tears rolled down her eyes. "Were you exchanging those things to pay back the money?" Su Changqing took a deep breath. After all, he knew that Wen Yao was pregnant with a child and did not do anything to her. "He can't tell, so tell me, how much is it?" "Dad, it's 1,000 taels." Su Yuking knew Wen Yao couldn't answer, so she shouted tremblingly. 1,000 taels. Su Changqing's hands were trembling a little. Even if 1,000 taels were placed in the Su mansion, it would be a big expense. Su Changzhong actually gambled it all away. Looking at the fakes in the room, Su Changqing felt that she couldn't suppress her anger. Seeing him throw away Wen Yao and want to teach Su Changzhong a lesson, Wen Yao rolled her eyes and fainted. "Mother!" Su Yuking quickly supported Wen Yao. Being interrupted like this, Su Changqing couldn't care less about educating Su Changzhong. He immediately picked up Wen Yao and ordered someone to fetch the doctor. Just as the servants were on their way to ask for the doctor, the news suddenly spread in the Su mansion. When the old lady heard that Sun Gro had gone to Zanjiu Yuan, she naturally couldn't sit still and hurriedly got up and hurried away. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 139. Chapter 139 Punishing the Subordinate. When Sun Gro arrived at Zanjiuyuan, the doctor was carrying the medicine box in. She followed in worriedly. Su Changqing, who received the news, had already packed up the house, and when he met Sun Gro, he looked like he had just arrived. "Madam, why are you here? I heard that Mrs. Wen fainted. I was worried about the child in her belly, so I came to take a look." Sun Gro looked at Su Changqing, showing some doubts. "Isn't the Marquis in the study? Why are you here? He's better than me. It's coming even faster." Su Changqing paused for breath for a second and twitched his lips. "Isn't it because Lu Hong is not here? Since I am the master of the Su mansion, I naturally have to take care of him." "Really?" Sun Gro raised an eyebrow, "but Mr. Ho, you should also be careful. If word gets out, it won't be good for people to gossip about you and Mrs. Wen." When she said this, Sun Gro's eyes were filled with chills, but Su Changqing was nervous, worried that Sun Gro would find out the clues, and did not notice her emotion at all. Sun Gro naturally did it on purpose. She just wants Su Changqing to be nervous. The more nervous he is, the more mistakes he makes. He brought an outer room and an outer room back to the Su mansion, and secretly communicated with her under her nose. Su Changqing didn't take her seriously at all. "When I asked to marry her, I was very obedient. Now that I have gained fame and fortune, I think about pursuing someone else." She has no affection for Su Changqing now, and even feels disgusted when she sees this man. But in order not to alert the snake, she could only recover a little from these places. "Madam, how can others think too much about the relationship between me and my wife?" Su Changqing is not afraid of Sun Gro, but now that Suya has been sent to fight the homeless people in the northwest, he is somewhat worried that if this kid wins, the Sun family will rise again. Even though the Sun family survived, he still had a good heart. It took him 20 years to pretend in front of Sun Gro. "I just said it casually." Sun Gro curled her lips, caught a glimpse of the old lady coming in from the corner of her eye, and stopped talking. The old lady saw the two of them and said, "You and your wife have a good understanding and came together." With this statement, if one were not aware of this, one would really think that Su Changqing came with Sun Gro. It seems like it deliberately highlights the feelings between the two. "Mother, why are you here?" Unexpectedly, even the old lady would be disturbed. Su Changqing felt a little guilty and a little strange. "Although I didn't remind you deliberately, the people in this yard should know it. Why did you invite a doctor to make such a fuss that all the masters of Su mansion came?" He stepped forward to support the old lady and said, "Mom, why don't you go back and rest first? It's out of the way here. If something happens to me alone in our Su mansion, can I rest?" The old lady glanced at Su Changqing and sat down. "I'll go back when the doctor comes out and explains the situation. I'll listen to you." Soon, the doctor came out. He walked up to a few people, cupped his hands and said, "Mrs. Wen fainted because her blood surged and she was pregnant, so she didn't recover for a while. Just have a good rest." "It's okay." Sun Gro stroked her chest gently, met Aunt Zhong's eyes, and asked, "Why did Mrs. Wen faint? But what happened?" Being looked at by Sun Gro, Grandma Zhong didn't dare to look at Su Changqing, and she didn't know how to answer for a while. Su Changqing coughed lightly, "Maybe the servant didn't take good care of me, so it's okay." "Madam, since I'm fine, you and your mother should go back and rest." "Master Marquis, how can you say that? Mrs. Wen is a guest, and our servants in Su mansion don't take good care of us. Isn't this telling others that our Su mansion is lax in discipline?" Sun Gro glanced around and said coldly. Everyone who is serving in Zanjiuyuan should go and get 10 boards. If they still can't serve you well next time, they will be sent out. Madam, this. Su Changqing never expected that something like this would happen. Sun Gro glanced over, and he didn't know how to dissuade him. Master Marquis, we cannot tolerate this kind of thing every time there is one. There are 2 this time. Mrs. Wen and the child in her belly are fine, but what about next time? Everyone listens to my wife. Su Changqing could not refute, so he had to give Aunt Zhong a look. The latter took a group of servants to receive the punishment. Master Ho, won't you leave? Sun Gro was about to leave when she saw Su Changqing, who was still standing there, and asked. Let's go. Of course I have to leave. Su Changqing originally wanted to stay and see the situation, but after Sun Gro said this, he had no choice but to leave first. But Sun Gro sent him directly to the study. Master Marquis, I asked someone to cook the soup before, and it will be delivered in a moment. After you drink it, go to bed early. Mrs. Yet. Su Changqing looked at Sun Gro's retreating figure and reluctantly returned to the study. He was worried that the servant who brought the soup would inform Sun Gro if he saw him, so he did not leave the study and only asked the servant to go to Zanjiuyuan to deliver the message. But this time, we only waited until the sound of the gong at the 3rd watch. Su Changqing shook his head. He was very tired. When he opened the door, he saw that the boys were already asleep on their stomachs. He kicked the boy hard and woke him up. Master Ho. The boy got up in a panic and knelt in front of Su Changqing. Madam, soup hasn't been delivered yet. I didn't see anyone coming. Su Changqing's expression was not very good. Then why don't you go ask about the situation? Yes, yes, the little one will go right away. The boy quickly got up and headed towards Huiro Pavilion. Su Changqing glanced at him a few times. The elderly man could no longer hold on anymore, so he had to go back to his room to rest. At this time, Zanjiuyuan. Inside the house, Su Changzhong and Su Yuking knelt in front of Wen Yao. Mom, my son knows he is wrong. Su Changzhong's injuries have been treated, and they are not as painful as before. It's just that after kneeling for a long time, his knees began to hurt. The only voice in the room was Su Changzhong's, but Su Yuking didn't dare to speak. She could see that Wen Yao was really angry this time. Those vases and porcelain bowls were sold for 1,000 taels. Wen Yao was holding a fake in her hand, with a terrifyingly gloomy face. But she was not angry about the money, but felt that the brother and sister now had strong wings, and they dared to do anything to her. Bad, almost. Su Changzhong's voice was a little weaker, as if he was frightened by Wen Yao's mood. You are really powerful. How many times did I tell you before coming to Su Mansion? Don't gamble, don't gamble. You turned a deaf ear to what I said. Wen Yao held her chest and took a few breaths. Her breathing seemed to be unsteady. Su Yuking said in a panic, Mom, please pay attention to yourself. I think you want to make me angry to death. Don't you want to be called young master or miss? Mom, we don't dare. Su Changzhong and Su Yuking returned quickly. If something really happened to Wen Yao, the good days of the two of them would have come to an end. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter returns, the real daughter is reborn. Author, past and present. Chapter 140. Chapter 140, Stealing Money. Wen Yao threw the fake in her hand into the corner, and it easily shattered on the ground. There are a lot of debris piled up in the corner of the wall. Wen Yao gathered her clothes, stood up and sat in front of the bronze mirror. Her lips were white and she looked sickly. Mother Zhong. Hearing the sound, Grandma Zhong immediately brought her servants in. Except for Aunt Zhong, the servants all looked pale, walked with a limp, and made a few slight whining sounds from time to time. Several servants came forward to clean up. Soon, the debris in the corner was cleared, and the servants retreated. Wen Yao looked at Aunt Zhong and said, "Auntie, I will give you more money this month, but today I have made them suffer." Mrs. Wen is so polite, this is what you should do. Mother Zhong said this, but there was still a look of satisfaction in her eyes. Although she takes care of Wen Yao and Zhang Yuan, in the final analysis, she is Su Changqing's person, and she has to watch Wen Yao's actions for Su Changqing to some extent. Su Changzhong and Su Yuking were still kneeling on the ground. Aunt Zhong glanced at them and said, "Mrs. Wen, the young master and the young lady have been kneeling for a long time. They must know that they are wrong. Why don't we let them get up? Mommy, I know you are good to these two children, but this time, they must learn a lesson." When Yao closed the distance with Aunt Zhong without leaving a trace, "I'm afraid, Mr. Ho, also disappointed in me." Wen Yao lowered her head and wiped a tear from the corner of her eye with a handkerchief. Mother Zhong hurriedly said, "Mrs. Wen, the Marquis will not blame you. This matter has passed. It's my fault." Wen Yao sighed, "Mommy, if the Marquis wants to punish them tomorrow, I will ask you to intercede on their behalf." "Don't worry, madam, I will do my best. It's just a matter of trouble, Mama." Wen Yao forced a smile, looking a little haggard. Mrs. Zhong saw it and said, "Mrs. Wen, go to rest earlier. Master Su, Miss Su, get up quickly." Su Changzhong and Su Yuking glanced at Wen Yao cautiously, and the latter waved her hand, "Since Grandma feels sorry for you, why don't you get up quickly and treat Grandma well in the future? Mrs. Wen is too polite." "Mom, thank you." Su Changzhong and Su Yuking stood up from the ground and looked at Aunt Zhong gratefully. This kind of flattery was particularly useful to Grandma Zhong. "Master Su, Miss Su, go back and rest quickly. It'll be okay." The two nodded and left the house. Su Yuking pulled Su Changzhong all the way to the room. After entering the room, she looked around carefully before closing the door. "Aren't you going back to rest? Why did you bring me to your room?" Su Changzhong looked sleepy and wished he could lie down right now. His knees were sore all over again, and the place where he had been injured began to hurt again. "Can you still sleep?" Su Yuking was so angry that she sat on the couch and rubbed her knees with her hands. Fortunately, there was a carpet in Wen Yao's room, otherwise they would have collapsed long ago after kneeling for so long. "What else can I do? I've been beaten, and I have no money. I don't sleep. How can I sit here and wait for the money?" Su Changzhong snorted, moved a chair over, and sat down. "You," Su Yuking was so angry at Su Changzhong's appearance, "why were you beaten again tonight? Do you owe money again? You, don't talk nonsense." Su Changzhong looked like he didn't have 300 taels of silver here, but Su Yuking couldn't tell. She felt like she almost lost her breath. "Brother, are you crazy? How much do you owe?" "That's it," Su Changzhong blinked rapidly, stroking his clothes with both hands, "it's just 100 taels." Hearing the 100 taels, Su Yuking didn't know whether she should be grateful or angry. "Yes, it's only 100 taels. Do you think we still have that much money now?" Su Yuking asked. Su Changzhong didn't know what he thought of. He rolled his eyes and fell on the cabinet on the side. Seeing his gaze, Su Yuking suddenly raised her hand to block his gaze. "Brother, don't even think about taking away any of my money." "Yuking, aren't we brothers and sisters? My brother is in trouble, how can you just ignore him?" Su Changzhong remembered that there was a lot of money in Su Yuking's small box. Su Yuking had saved little by little over the years, and she was reluctant to use any of it, let alone use it to pay off Su Changzhong's gambling debt. "Yu Qing, when you become the legitimate daughter of the Ho family, won't all the Su family's money be yours? Why don't you lend me the money first?" Instigated by Su Changzhong. The money he saved was either spent or gambled, and now his pockets are really empty. Su Yuking thought of the decorations in Su Leun and Su Wanner's yard, and greed slowly appeared in her eyes. From now on, those things will be hers. No. Suyuking came back to her senses and saw that Suchongzhon had reached for her small box. She quickly took the small box over and held it in her arms. Brother, this money is really useless, I have other uses. Looking at Suyuking's appearance, Suchongzhon curled his lips and complained, where else can you spend so much money? You don't have to worry about it. Suyuking held on to her small treasury. Of course she had money to spend. She is already 16. If she doesn't plan for herself anymore, what will she do in the future? Okay, I'll figure it out myself. Suchongzhon rolled his eyes, but before leaving, his gaze almost invisible glanced at Suyuking's arms. Obviously, he still wanted the money. It is quiet in the dead of night. A figure quietly entered Suyuking's house. Look around and look around. Suchongzhon finally found the small box Suyuking had hidden. He put the prepared white paper and stones into the small box pretending to be banknotes and silver, and then left quietly. The next day, Sun Jiaro sent a nanny and several maids to Zanjiuiwan. The old lady and my wife said they were worried that the servants were injured and were not well taken care of, so they asked us to come and help. The leader, Nanny Ying, looked cold and serious. Mother Zhone glanced at Wenyao, shook her head slightly, and told Wenyao not to refuse. Yao thanked Mrsu and Mrsu. Wenyao had a calm expression on her face, but when she entered the house and the door was closed, she asked, Mother Zhone, is that Grandma Sun Jiaro's? Mama Ying is the person close to the old lady. Mother Zhone explained. These words made Wenyao feel relieved. It turns out to be Mrsu's person, so it should be fine, right? Mrs Wen, don't take it lightly. Although Nanny Ying is the old lady's servant, the same cannot be said for those servants. Wenyao naturally knew this truth. Mother Zhone, if you can, just transfer those few people out to do some rough work. The old slave will arrange it. End of this chapter.